So, hello, my name is Rufus May, and I've been invited to speak to you from here in Europe about holistic approaches to mental health. And in particular, Aparna Sanyal asked me for the Red Door Festival to talk about what have I learned from my own experiences of psychosis and recovery, which is a big question, and I'm going to try and focus it in two main areas: language and meaning. So firstly, when I was 18, I'll tell you a little bit about my life. I'd been depressed in my teenage years, and I had a breakdown. Didn't feel like a breakdown, felt like a breakthrough. I started to see the world differently. I thought I was a spy. I thought I was involved in a battle between good and evil. I thought other times that it was more about East versus West, communism versus capitalism. And I was the centre of this drama. And if people scratched their nose, it was symbolic for me. If I opened a book randomly, there was a message from God or from my ex-girlfriend for me. So the world was very dreamlike and exciting, and in a way that protected me from a depressing reality that I didn't have many friends. I didn't have a sense of purpose. I was 18, I felt pressure to succeed, and I'd not succeeded academically. And it was almost like this magical world came, a magical part of me, like a childlike part, came out and said, no, don't worry about that, this is how the world really is. And it protected me from perhaps feeling suicidal. But unfortunately, Western society doesn't really respect alternative mind states like that. And I was fairly quickly given a diagnosis of schizophrenia and put on very strong sedating medication to try and suppress these ideas and experiences. But I found the medication did as much harm as good. It gave me loads of side effects, and it weakened me physically. It made me very sleepy. I'd be sleeping 14 hours a day. It affected my sexual abilities, affected my abilities to do press-ups. These things were important to a young man. And with it was this kind of prediction that I got this diagnosis of schizophrenia partly because other family members had struggled with their mental health and had diagnosis of schizophrenia on my mother's side. And so I got this label that was like, you've got this lifelong condition, you might as well give up. And so what I learned from that was that's not a very good system. And I guess I always remained sceptical about the value of diagnoses and lifelong, particularly lifelong diagnoses, and sort of sticking people into categories. And I think that everyone's unique, and we need to try and find the meanings of their distress and confusion. And I think I didn't just go mad because some time bomb went off in my head. There was a build-up of pressures in my life, and nobody wanted to make sense of them with me. So in those days, it was thought if you're psychotic or you're seen as having schizophrenia, talking about your experiences will make it worse. So the main approach was just medication. Now in the UK, it's acknowledged that psychological approaches can be helpful, but the priority is getting medication into people, which I don't agree with. I think that medication can sometimes be helpful, but we use it in much too heavy-handed a way. But diagnosis is a very important part of our culture, of Western culture. It's perhaps dates back to colonial times of categorizing people and stratifying them, and unfortunately there's money to be made from the whole diagnostic system. Meaning was the other thing that I wanted to talk about. I guess the most meaningful thing that happened to me during my 3 psychiatric admissions when I was 18, before I broke away from mental health services and came off medication and never took it again. Most meaningful thing was a friend coming back from travelling and during my second admission visiting me very regularly, nearly every day, and that rehumanised me. I was beginning to feel ostracised from the community. A lot of friends wouldn't visit me. I was very aware of this kind of them and us culture. Either you're mentally well or you're mentally ill, and there's no continuum. It's just these two different categories. And I'd become this kind of leper in a way, and people would treat me as if I didn't know what was best for me and not involve me in any decisions about my care. So if I was angry about being in hospital, I could be held down and injected against my will, and this seemed outrageous to me, and upsetting, and made me very angry. But here I had a friend treating me as an equal, coming to see me, seeing me as going through something meaningful. She knew that I'd struggled emotionally in my teenage years, partly with family illness. My mother's had a brain hemorrhage when I was 11. And yeah, this unconditional sort of being there for me was a lifesaver and gave me hope, and made my beliefs seem less important, because here I had real connection, real possibility, somebody believing in me. So I didn't need the MI5 believing in me, which was one of my delusions or alternative beliefs. So yeah, meaning. I think we need to look at psychotic experiences. Unfortunately, because they've been categorized as a biological mental illness, the potential for them to be meaningful is overlooked, and that again can be very dehumanizing. So I recommend the British Psychological Society report, understandingpsychosis.com. If you go there, you can find that, and there's lots of evidence, and I have that lived experience evidence, I guess, that you can make meaning from your experiences. And lastly, I would just say I learned to be creative, that I got back in touch with my creativity. There was a good day hospital where I did pottery and drama, and I used drama, drumming, dance, martial arts in my in the therapeutic approaches that I advocate, and of course peer support. Going back to the blessing that was my friend Catherine coming to see me in hospital, peer support is really powerful. Okay, so thank you very much for listening, and hope the rest of the festival goes well.